Come fly with me, far beyond the density, gazing down upon the matrix where you are free to see the cage, a place to which you refuse to be bound, because your mind, your soul, was always meant to soar with the eagles. Welcome to Beyond the Matrix. Greetings, everybody. It's me, Patricia Cori. Welcome back to Beyond the Matrix for people who think outside the box. And, if you're not thinking outside the box with Mike Oram, you are on the wrong channel. So it's my delight to bring Mike back on. He was supposed to be on last week for this part 2 of his story and our sharing of Starseed experience. But as you all know, I had a little blip because of the loss of karma, but we are back rolling and rocking. So without any further ado, let me just bring Mike on and share the screen. And we're going to dive into his recount, part 2 of his experience, which will tell us very much more about Star Brother Tellos, which he alluded to in part 1. And if you haven't seen part 1, you're going to want to go back and make sure you see that. Greetings, Mike. How are you? Wonderful to see you again.
Yes, it's lovely to see you again, and I do hope that the pain is lessened for you.
It is, because I decided to grab the proverbial bull by the horns, which is a story in itself. I'm going to share with you.
Yes.
Well, here it is. So, and you guys have already heard it if you're for the listeners, but let me just update Mike. So, day 2 of my extreme grief. I mean, I was, I'm Italian. I don't mess around. When I cry, I go for the gusto. So I was hysterical, crying hysterically. Please send me a message. And oh my God, I had a friend on Zoom who was trying to comfort me. And I look out the door. I've got a glass door in the living room. And I see this gigantic bull. I'm talking the size of a car. Now I live in the country, but you don't have bulls running around, big horns, the whole bit. Just looking in the door, and then I was speechless. I told my friend on the phone, on the computer, I go, "Oh my God, there's a chicken!" It was so fast, and then I saw 3 other cows come in on my lawn. I went, "Oh my God!" Oh, and because in Pat Cori world, which is not unlike yours, sometimes we can't discern if it's physical or not, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I said, I've got to get, and when I want to get a picture of it, it's to see what'll show up on camera. And when I look back, it was gone. Poof.
Oh, that's like a message from the angels to you.
That's right, exactly what it was. Because I asked Karma to come give me a sign, something. And this bull appeared. And honestly, I went outside, I looked for hoof marks, any damage on the plant, nothing. It was that fast, so fast that I looked back to say, oh, the camera's not working. And I looked back and it was gone. And they were gone. 4 cows, one of them a giant bull. Come on.
I don't know what the connection is, but I am Taurian.
No, I mean, it was a messenger from the spirit world, and I just believe that karma was showing me strength and power, and just look at me, I'm here, baby. And so I went right out and found a puppy, and now I've got a puppy coming in a couple of weeks. Another
brilliant!
Because it's a closure with karma. So I do think it was from the spirit world, and a great gift, an angelic gift for me. Anyway, speaking of spirit world, let's take up where we were, which is hard to do because there was so much we were talking about. But you promised you'd be telling us how Star Brother Tellos came into the picture. So
yes, I am. That is the next stage of the story. We're still back in 1970s. 1970 was just a massive year, which I'm going to tell you about in various stages, along with your chatting as well. I will try not to shut you out here.
Thank you.
I get a bit carried away when It's only when you start talking about your experiences, because it's just a way of life. It's my life's never been any different. So it's just a way of life.
Yeah.
And it's only when you start going through it all with somebody, you think, my God, what an incredible life I've had. Like many, many thousands of people, as I say, it's not just me, thousands and thousands of people, but you do tend to sort of forget about it. You get a bit blasé about it.
Okay, getting blasé about Grays coming in every night to get you and carry you onto a craft is a
Well,
little
yeah,
tricky.
yeah. Well, they obviously wanted
I
me.
hear you. I'm just being facetious.
Now, before we start, I want to quickly. Well, I didn't tell you last week when I spoke about the green stone, and it was a large cube of emerald in beryllium, and for decades I tried to find images of these stones, and then about 5 years ago I came across this book called Precious Stones, and I saw one in here, but it wasn't the right one because this one was six-sided, and I started to question, and I was thinking, well, it was a long while ago, Mike, you know, decades ago. Perhaps you just got it wrong. But then I found another book. This was Dr. Douglas Baker, and I was going to do back in 1970. I was going to do an esoteric course with Dr. Douglas Baker, but for various reasons I wasn't able to do it. But esoteric psychology, the 7 rays, and it shows you in here, and this is exactly what I saw. So I was right. It's a cube in beryllium.
Wow.
And that is what I saw, 4 squared. So I was really pleased about that. And I thought perhaps anybody that saw it last week might like to just see that image.
Okay, but you
Now,
said that is what I saw, but last time you were on, you said you had the stone.
no, I had the stone in my hand,
Okay.
but my mother threw it away when I was about 11.
Okay,
But
yeah.
I've always had it in my memory as a cube, an emerald that was as a cube. But I
Wow.
could never find any images of the cube.
You know, I mean, I people reacted to that fact that your mother threw it away. What do you think? Do you think it was just her fear, or do you think it was something else?
It could be either, because I used to say to my mother, I mean, she died, when did she die? Round about 19, she was 1994 she passed away. But I often used to say to my mother, you know who I am, don't you, Mum? Since I was a tiny child and up into my adulthood. And she used to say, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, you know where I've come from. You know why I'm here. You know that, I've got my real parents out there. And she always used to, she would never explain, but she had many experiences herself with UFOs. But she always used to end, whenever I questioned her about this, she used to just say, well, just remember, Mike, I am a 7th child of a 7th child, which means that it could be connected to the sort of the fairy kingdom. It could be connected to a powerful person that's a 7th child of a 7th child, and very psychic person. Not me. I'm talking about my mother. My mother said that she was the 7th child of a
Yes,
7th child, and she used to just leave it there. But I mean, I came home from work one day in my very early 20s, and she said to me, I was upstairs, she said, I had a vac, she was vacuuming, cleaning the small room upstairs, and she said, I suddenly had a feeling to look at the window. She said, and coming down out of the sky was this light, and it came towards me at the most tremendous speed, and it was a typical flying saucer, and she said it hovered right outside the window. And then she said it turned and then shot back up into the sky. I mean, she used to come out with things like this. So she was the one person I could talk to, the only person, about my experiences. She
But you
didn't
know,
understand it all.
I think we will agree that it's often the case that um, these experiences are familial. It's like, you know, very often if a child is having abduction, it's been the family, the parents, etc. So it
Actually,
makes
yeah,
sense that someone in your trajectory, and that would be someone that would also be nurturing you, would also have the gift of sight and possibly experience. So that's
yeah,
why I asked you. I mean, I wonder if she was trying to repress her own experience of it by repressing you.
yes. I think, which is why I used to say to her, you know who I am, you know what this is about, because I knew that she knew more, but I didn't know how much. But I knew that there was more to my mother than how she portrayed herself to the rest of the family, which I can understand. Um,
That's what I picked up immediately when you were telling me about that. Oh,
yes, yes,
so you were going to go take us back now to 1970.
yes. Now, Warminster in Wiltshire played a massive part of my life. It made me, in a way, the person I am today. And I think I ended the last session with saying that once my article of seeing that huge mothership in the sky, and it was put into a magazine called Flying Saucer Review, and this man, young lad, same age as me, found where I lived and mentioned to me about Warminster, which I'd never heard of. He said, "You must go there, it's incredible." And because we went there, and up on Cradle Hill, if you remember, um, there was about 200 people. And up to that point, I used to think I was the only person in the world, to have. I mean, there weren't computers then. There wasn't anywhere you could find out anything. You couldn't go and just find out about, is there a UFO group somewhere?
Yep.
I used to think I was the only person. And then I saw these 200 people up Cradle Hill, and some of them were experiencers, but many came from all around the world. But it started with Warminster, just a very, very quick intro. It started on Christmas Eve in 1964, and people started to see lights and craft coming down the high streets, or hovering over the hills, or stopping cars, stopping lorries, landing in the fields. It got to such a fever pitch that they had demanded by the local people, they had a meeting in the town hall. And it was on August the 27th, 1965 at 7:30 p.m. Over 10,000 people
Wow.
arrived in Warminster that weekend. And this is 1964. There were so many people, it was stacked to the gunnels in the town hall, that it all spilled out onto the street, the pavement, onto the road. So they ended up putting speakers outside the town hall for the
That's
people
amazing.
outside, and they had this meeting with the mayor and with other dignitaries and other people. Now, 1964, not many people were a bit too scared to come forward and talk about seeing flying saucers, but some did stand up and said what they had seen. And I interviewed a lot of those people 2 or 3 years later. But strange sounds were heard on roofs, like someone was ripping the slates off of the roofs, and people would run outside and there'd be nobody there. There ain't no slates smashed on the floor. Strange sounds were heard. Now, it is next to a military base, Warminster, and I'm sure some of these things were connected to the military, but not everything. And I can personally vouch for that because of the craft that I saw there over the years. And of course, that is one place where I met Tellos when he landed in the craft, which I will tell you about. But they said that even the pubs ran dry that weekend. So many people were there. Warminster became famous all around the world, and people came from all around the world. It was an incredible place. And straight after work on a Friday, from when I was 17 onwards, I would go straight down to Warminster and spend the whole weekend there. It was about 120 miles, which was quite a distance for the UK compared to America. And it's close to Stonehenge, it's close to Glastonbury, it was close to Avebury, Silbury Hill.
Triangulation, right?
You know,
that triangle
yeah,
of cosmic energy.
absolutely. And of course, it's well known. This probably gets more crop circles than anywhere else in the world.
Yep.
There's a lot of energy down there, and for people that are sensitive, you can really pick this energy up.
You're talking to a girl who spent every single year since I had my first crop circle experience, I've been in the fields until last year because of the lockdown.
Oh, you know all about it then. Absolutely, yes. But we ended up sort of setting up a research group. I eventually moved there when I got the opportunity in about 1977, and I lived there for 7 years. We ran a UFO center, and people came from all around the world, even on Christmas Day, and they would just walk in the front door because it wasn't locked. You know, you could be sitting there having a chat or having your meal, and someone would just walk into the living room and say they're from Brazil or somewhere, and where could they see the UFOs? I mean, it was an incredible time, and was the most greatest time of my life. We even printed a magazine, which was free. So that's how it all started. Now, I had a week. We used to go for a long weekend, Friday night till Sunday night, and then drive back to London. But then we decided to have a week in Warminster. Now, I won't go through the whole story, it's too long. But there was three of us, myself, John Bennett, who I'm still in touch with, and another friend, Chris Trubridge, who I don't really see much. I haven't seen him for years. But we decided to spend a week there. Now, can you imagine, for these young kids who were so excited, people used to say to me, when are you coming back down to Warminster? Because when you come down, we see all these things. And I said, well, I'll be down next week or 2 weeks' time or something. And they would all turn up. But also, amazing things happen because, you know, you could flash a torch up in the sky, say 3 times, and wait. And these 3 huge flashes way up in the distance out in the heavens would flash back. And they would stop over the hills and send out small little lights that would come and hover near you. And we used to call them brain lights because we thought they were observing through these little lights. But people used to say, well, how do you see so much and such amazing things? And all I think it was at the time is that we were so fired up. We had so much eagerness about us and determination and love to sort of see and possibly meet these people that I think they were answering our energy a lot of the time because we were so desperate. And we would stand there all night, the entire night, waiting for craft to come. And we had the most amazing experiences. But this week in Warminster, I'll go through it briefly. I can always go through it another time in greater length because it happened the whole 9 days we were there. And it started off by, we saw this little red light coming over one of the ancient Iron Age forts of Scratchbury Hill and Battlesbury Hill. It was going over Scratchbury Hill. And as it was going across the sky, it was in the evening, sky was clear. It broke up into 3 red lights and they shot off in different directions. So cut a long story short, we eventually went down to our favourite place called Star Hill. Cradle Hill, the other side of town, was always where most people went, but Star Hill, nobody went. It was incredible. There were no lights, no pollution whatsoever. And that's where I had most of my amazing experiences. This light came back and it followed the contours of Scratchbury Hill, and it stopped over a little hill in front of us called Star Hill with 2 R's. And it hovered over the top of that. There was a tumuli on top of it.
A what?
And a tumuli. It's an ancient, well, they're in a way they're an ancient burial mound, because if you dig inside them, you would find possibly a large pottery jug with ashes. You might find some bones and some tools.
A tumuli?
Tumuli. 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 Tumuli.
Got it. The sound wasn't that great. Okay.
No, it's my Cockney accent.
Love it.
That's what it is. And it stopped over the top, and we flashed a torch at it, and it flashed back. We even tried flashing 7 times once, and it flashed back 7 times. It sent little lights out that came and landed in the field in front of us, the field behind us, and one up by the little track, which was our only exit back out of Star Hill.
Wow.
And
I've been there with you.
when they landed, they went out. You couldn't see them. And the big craft over the top of the hill shot off. Now, we waited there for about an hour. Nothing was happening. So we thought we would drive back up to the main road, drive through town, the other side of town, up to Cradle Hill, to see if there was anybody up there, which there usually was, and see if they saw this red light coming over. But as we were driving along the little dark track, the 3 of us were in my friend's mini car. Now, bearing in mind in those days that the headlights were just the old-fashioned bulbs. And as we went over the little humpback bridge, where the railway line was underneath, we came down the other side and levelled off. But as we were driving along, it was right near where one of the red lights had landed in the field. And all of a sudden, our headlights got so incredibly bright, we all had to shield our eyes from it. Now, it couldn't have been the headlights on reflection, because the light bulbs would have just broken. My friend who was sitting in the back, he said that this incredible light shot through from the hedge, and this other light was behind it that landed in the field there. It was decided that I get out and have a look over the hedge, but you couldn't see anything. The hedge was too tall. We got back in the car, went up to Cradle Hill. There was weirdly, and it's the only time I know, there was nobody up there. So we came back to Star Hill, and we parked the car and waited. And then about 30 minutes later, there's a farmhouse right down in the hollows across the end of the field, quite a distance away, and a light appeared. And we thought it must have been, we'd never noticed it before, but we thought it must have been a light in the bathroom of the old farmhouse. But it just stayed there for about 5 minutes. We talked about it a couple of times, but then it started to rise up out of the ground, off the ground. And there were 3 lights forming a triangle. And the one on top was revolving. As it was revolving, it was lighting up the field as it was coming round. I mean, we were almost unconscious with excitement. And the car was facing down that field. So I leant into the car and flashed the headlights at it. And it started coming towards us. And we were leaping about, 18-year-olds leaping about in excitement, thinking, contact, we're having contact. And it stopped. And it didn't move. So I said, look, we've got to go and meet that if it doesn't want to come any further. So we started to run, the 3 of us, in the dark, pitch black, through the field, the cornfield. We got halfway across, and then my friend said, you do know there's adders in this field, don't you? And we thought, adders? And we turned around and ran back. You know, an adder, a snake. No, it's Britain's only poisonous snake.
Famous black adder.
Eh?
The famous black adder.
Well, yeah, Blackadder. That yeah. Well, that was a TV film,
Oh,
but
okay.
they're
I
not.
thought that
But
they were actually black
no, no,
vipers.
that was a TV film.
Okay.
Very funny series of films. No, it's not black. It has like a Z light down its back, but it's the only poisonous snake. And he said, "You do know there's adders in this field. Now we're running towards this possible alien craft from some distant galaxy, which didn't scare us." And he mentions adders, and we legged it back to the car. And when I got back, I said, "Well, that was a bit stupid of us, wasn't it?" And then it started coming towards us. So we flashed the light again, and it stopped again. And then it slowly went back down where it came from. Now, I say, cut a long story short, but every night we went back, this light came along, stopped over the tumuli on Star Hill, dropped these little lights that landed around us, and then that would shoot off. So on like the Thursday, we thought if we go up on top of the tumuli and wait up there for it, it's going to be right over the top of us. And we took a torch and went up there, and it did not appear. We went up the next night, it did not appear. It had appeared all the other nights. So we came back down to the barn, and the light was back doing its thing. But then we decided to go up again, and we had a red filter on our torch. And I said to my friend, "Look, don't flash the torch until it's right overhead of us." And it came from a different direction. It came out from open ground, and it was coming at a tremendous speed. It was 4, 6 times, 8 times as large as the one we were seeing, and it was coming directly towards us on top of the tumuli. And I said to my friend, "Wait till it's overhead and then flash the torch." It was still about 1 mile away, and he flashed the torch, and it just went out in an instant. And I've seen them do this so much. I've seen them materialize in front of me and dematerialize, or change in frequency, or putting up some sort of cloaking device or something. I really don't know. But I was a bit annoyed because he flashed the torch too soon.
What happened? You didn't explain. It just disappeared. It just.
It just disappeared. And it was coming to us at tremendous speed, and it just went out like switching off a light bulb. Now, we were standing up there when all of a sudden, coming down the track was this car that was coming at the most amazing speed. Now, we thought it might have been drunks in a car because it was driving so fast, and there's nobody else there. We had all our equipment in the car, so I said, "We better get back to the car to see what's going on." And as we approached the fence, 4 excited men were standing there, one of whom we knew, who was a nurse, and he said he had brought his 3 friends along to Warminster for the first time, but they were up on Cradle Hill, but they still saw the light. And they said, "Did you see that light? Did you see that incredible light, that huge red light? It was hurtling towards Star Hill. You must have seen it." Now, we had this weird idea that we were going to be having contact and this was just for us. We didn't want anybody else around. So we just tried to play it down. And we said, "Oh, yes, we saw it, don't know where it went." And they went away, but it never came back. We had another night down at the barn. We came down from the hill, and it never came back. But it was the most incredible week. And the reason I'm telling you this is because we got back home Sunday night about midnight. My mum and dad, who would normally have been in bed, were waiting up for me to get home, to make sure I got home safe. I burst through the front door and I said, "You won't believe what an incredible week I've had. Now just sit down and listen to this." And I went through the whole lot. Now my mum was really quite interested and excited. My dad, the lovely man as he was, he couldn't go there. And I could see he was looking at me thinking, "What on earth have I helped to give birth to here?" Yeah, and who is who is this person that I've helped to be born? And so I thought, I really want my dad to see something. So I thought, well, look, they tell me to go somewhere. They'll tell me to go somewhere at a certain time, wherever, whether I was at home in Essex or I was down in Wiltshire or wherever I was. So I thought, if they tell me, I'll ask them to come. So I sat in meditation on and off for about 3 times, 3 days, saying to them, look, I really, really need my dad to see you. You know, I've got to somehow try and make him realise that what I'm telling him is things that really happen. Now, I was working at the Ford Motor Company then, in a place called Dagenham, huge place, and it was like a 3-shift system. And I was on night work this particular week. We started at 10 o'clock at night, and we finished at 6 o'clock in the morning. Now, I would go to bed in the afternoon, 3 or 4 hours, and then Mum would wake me up at 8 o'clock to have my evening meal, and then I would drive off to start the night work shift. I was woken up early. Now, I was used to this anyway, because they would wake me up and tell me to go somewhere or open the front door or look out a certain window or whatever, and they would be there. I was woken up suddenly. It wasn't my time to get up. And this voice said, go and look out of your parents' bedroom window. I went in there, looked out, and up in the sky, hovering over the house, was this huge silver globe. And it was like surrounded by some sort of electromagnetism or energy, because it was like bits of like white crystal were like coming off of the edges of it. It looked incredible. I went downstairs. Mum was out in the kitchen preparing my evening meal. I didn't think of telling Mum. Dad was sitting in the armchair, and I said to him, because he was so down to earth, I said to him, would you like to see one of those flying saucers, Dad? And sort of tongue in cheek, he said, yeah, I wouldn't mind, son. I said, well, go and open the front door and have a look. Now, one thing my dad never done, he never got excited. He had a strange sense of humour, but he never got excited. And I said, well, go and have a look. He opened the front door, he stepped outside, he looked up, and hovering over the house was this huge silver globe. And he said, quick, he said, go and get the binoculars. So I rushed and got the binoculars, and here was a man that doesn't get excited. And he was looking at it through the binoculars. He was looking for 3 or 4 minutes, and it was still sitting there on basically a housing estate. And I thought, it's sitting there for quite a while in a reasonably built up area. And I got this telepathic message, and it said, if we went away too quickly, they said, your father would go inside and sit down and forget about it. They said for us to wait for this certain amount of time, and this was their words, he would fully take into his consciousness what he was seeing, and he would never forget it. And then it started to move then across the road, and we were starting to lose it over the tops of the houses opposite. So he said, quick, upstairs, he says. And he rushed upstairs. I had a job keeping up with him. And I was the fast runner. I was running for my country. So we got upstairs into their bedroom, and he was running towards the curtains. Now, one thing you never, ever done in our house was touch my mum's net curtains. Now, my dad, it was more than his life was worth to touch the net curtains, because she always knew that they'd been tampered with. Well, I was always moving the net curtains because I was always looking out the window. But my dad would not have dared touch these net curtains. I used to look at the pleats. I used to memorize where all the pleats were. So when I put the net curtain back, I thought she won't realise I've messed up her net curtains, and she still noticed. I don't know how. She must have had a sixth sense about the pleats in these net curtains. He rushed up to the window, and I thought, oh, what's he going to do? Mum's net curtains. He shoved them across so fast he almost ripped them off of the rail. And he flung open the window, and we saw the craft, and it was going across, and it hovered over the River Thames, and you could see it glowing in the water below. It stopped for a few seconds, and then it done a classic thing that these craft do. It moved to the left slightly and stopped, waited a few seconds, and then it just shot off into the sky at the most incredible speed. My dad said to me, where's it gone? Where's it gone? And I said, it just shot off into the sky. It was too quick for his eyes to see. Now, life went on, but the interesting thing about this is many years later, Mum passed away in 1994 when she was 74. Dad passed away in 1998 when he was 86. We never mentioned it again. We never talked about flying saucers or UFOs or nothing.
That's odd.
But he was in an elderly people's home, but he was then taken to a hospice. Now, I was 300 miles away, and I was driving up and down like a yo-yo, trying to care for him, make sure everything's in place with Meals on Wheels and everything. But now he was in a hospice. And I was so fed up driving down 300 miles, I came down on the train, and I went to the hospital. I sat down, and I was shocked to see him because his face was so white and it was gaunt, it was sunken. It didn't look like my dad at all. And you could see that his passing was not far away. Now, his memory was starting to go some years, but he could always talk about the war. But he couldn't even do that day. And I sat talking to him for a couple of hours, just generally chatting. And then I said to him, I'm sorry, Dad, but I've got to go now. And I said, I've got to get the train back up to the north of England. And I kissed him on the forehead. And I turned to leave the room. And he suddenly said, after 2 hours of not speaking or recognizing what I was talking about, he suddenly said, you remember that light? And I turned and I said, what light, Dad? And he said, the light that came over the house. Do you remember it? And I said, well, of course I do. I said, do you remember it? And he did. I said, tell me about it. And he went through the whole thing. And he didn't miss out anything. And I got back home in the north of England. And I got a phone call at 4 o'clock in the morning to say that he had passed away. And that was the last words that I heard from him. But is that not what they said in 1970? By waiting for this amount of time, he will fully take into his consciousness what he was seeing, and he would never forget it.
Yeah.
So that was an incredible moment. Now, before I go on to the next one, I ought to allow you into this because I'm taking over.
You're such a sweetheart. I would like to interject that you're talking to someone who has also had a lot of experience. And I don't really talk about it too terribly much with my public, but I've had craft. When you said the three lights and the triangle, I've had craft over my house in Rome, and I remember one night my partner was very skeptical, and he used to say to me, you know, you mustn't be telling people that you're communicating with ETs. He said, you know, you're in the countryside of Italy. He said, these people will burn the house down.
Yeah.
I said, well, it's not like I'm running out naked saying, oh my God, there are ETs around. But one night, I do need to tell this story. So thank you for giving me the moment to do this. And then I'd love to know what your impression is. I was working at the computer, and all of a sudden the lights in the house went whoop, whoop. It was like the computer had to have crashed because it was a surge like nothing I've ever seen. Just, right out of a movie. I'm looking at the screen, and all of a sudden the lights just go bright lights. It was like being in a football stadium, and then clonk, and then boom again. And my first reaction was, oh my God, get out of the house. And I grabbed I had one small dog, and my two other big dogs were already on the balcony. And I went running out to the edge of my land, where as far as I could get from the house, and there was a gate, the driveway. And I'm looking at the house. And the funny thing was, I had just bought the house. And so my consciousness was focused on, oh my God, please don't let the house blow up. It was like I was put into a different mind frequency, to not look up. So I'm staring at the house, and it's going whoop, whoa. This thing is continuing to happen. All these lights, and then down, and it made no sense. So that while I was looking at it, meanwhile my dog's hair was like this. I was thinking the house is going to blow up, and my focus is still on the house. And I hear a voice over the hedge, and this woman says to me, Patricia. I couldn't see her, my neighbor. I said, yes. And she said, what is it? I said, I don't know. And she said, do you think it's UFOs? And
Oh,
I said, real country woman type, right? She goes, look up. Because I said, I don't know, always with the memory of my partner saying, don't tell the local people you have these visions. And I look up. And I mean, she's the one that told me to look up. I'm still looking straight. And it was the replay of Close Encounters of the Third Kind,
mm.
being all these colors. And there was I'd like to know if you've experienced this. There was a layer that was like angel hair. It was very cloudy, and it looked fibrous like angel hair. I hope you know what angel hair is.
Yes,
And
I do.
the lights were shining through so that it was fur. It was gorgeous. I mean, there were different colors, and it was like all these lights, and I just went, okay, this is where they've come to take, to the point that I thought, how will I leave a message for him? He'll never know what happened to me. I was thinking, I wanted to let me take the dogs. All these things are going through my mind. The next day, I learned from this woman. She said, please don't discuss what happened last night in front of my husband. I said, you're the one that's talking, girlfriend. The neighbor that was on, like, my house was deep set in from the street. The neighbor on one side had their television blow up and was hospitalized because they had pieces of glass in their face. And the person on the other side of the house also had the refrigerator blowout, the TV screen blowout, and she wasn't hospitalized, but they were traumatized. And it seemed to all be focused around my house. So I was wondering if you've ever had that experience of that kind of energy crisis within the house, of everything going haywire, which was just really like a Spielberg movie. But this has happened to me more than one time.
Yeah, no, I've not actually experienced it inside the house, but I mean, I've experienced it with the odd craft down the years, especially down in Wiltshire, where there is so much, whether it's this electromagnetism or that surrounds the craft, and some of it more so than other times, and it can just, it's almost like it's spitting it off.
Yeah,
It's throwing it off, but
yeah.
I don't fully understand it.
In fact, when it came up, the conversation finally came up with the husband. He said, did you have any damage last night? And I said, no. And he said, I said, what do you think happened? And he said, oh, he said it was a power surge. It had to be a power surge at the local power station. I was like, that was one hell of a surge, Lorenzo. And that was the end of the discussion. And foolishly, I should have recorded the day and the time and whatever, but I don't do that. I'm not much of a researcher. I'm an experienced, intuitive. But that was something I really believed wholeheartedly, because it was over my house. So all this peripheral damage was happening to the neighbors, nothing happened to my house. And how is it possible that with these huge surges of energy, woo, 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 nothing blew out in the house? I still can't understand it. One thing I will say is that when I grabbed the dog, I pulled the plug out of the computer because I didn't want to lose yet another computer. So anyway, I just thought I'd share that, interject that with you.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. But was it? But you obviously had earlier experiences in this. This wasn't the first experience you had, was it?
No,
No.
I've had experiences like you all my life.
Yeah, but it's just that with this.
I've had situations where I've had. Did I tell you about the grays appearing when I was at the healing, in the healing center?
No.
Okay, so I'm working on this woman in my healing center. It's called Lightworks, and she was completely not from this world. She just, all of her, she was an artist. Everything was ET. Everything all the time was ET. And when I started working on her, as I was going myself into altered state, and so was she, because I was doing psychic, really deep altered state psychic healing. And I looked down and I saw she had gills because she was obsessed with being an underwater alien. And I saw gills on her throat, and they started to go up and down. I'm looking, and then all of a sudden, I saw these gray beings just materialize around the table, and there were 6 of them. There were 5 grays or 6 grays, I think, and one really tall gray, which is, when you were telling that story, I was just not speaking, but I thought, well, this is very familiar. And they just appeared around the table, and all of a sudden I saw this huge black cord or tube coming out of her power chakra and going up into the ceiling. And, in typical Patricia Cori fashion, I moved into this consciousness state where I said, I want to speak to the high commander here. And I look back at it and think, I don't know who was speaking through me, but that was something. And I demand, this is a sovereign soul. You have no right to take this energy, to use this device. I demand that this device be removed immediately, now. And it went and disappeared. And then they disappeared too.
Well, that's very powerful.
Now, I'm not quite sure I would have the same strength to make that demand, but probably.
Well, your higher self will.
Yeah, probably.
That's where your strength will truly be.
Yeah. And I mean, I've always just worked that way. It's just always been, that power. I'm sure you know it. It's like there's the phase when you're in that wonder part, and then like when you were young, and then at a certain point, it's just like, I know this. This is who I am. I'm in this, and nothing phases you really. You go from the wonder and the surprise and shock to, this is my life. This is, and like you, the reason why you contacted me was the 4-year-old declaration.
Yeah, that was all. Yeah.
And so we both have that. So there's quite a galactic connection between us, isn't
there? Absolutely.
Yeah. Yes. I love it. Okay, so take us on back now. I didn't really want to break through your story.
No, my pleasure. I can't take it all. It's not even my show. It's your show.
Yes, but you're my guest. And well, I think people are loving hearing both sides of this because,
and that's how it should be.
I really don't talk about it that much. You're giving me an opportunity to share things that sometimes I don't talk about those kinds of things very often.
Well, perhaps we'll get more opportunity as this goes on for you to tell us a bit more, eh?
Yeah.
Now, the next time, it's still 1970. I'm still 19 years old. And I went back to Warminster for the weekend. To say I would go down on a Friday night straight after work and stay till late Sunday before I drove back to London. And this particular time I'd gone, I had, it wasn't necessarily a straightforward telepathic connection where I hear the voice telling me, but it was like It was like a thought impression in my head. It was like impressed in me to go to Star Hill. I went on my own and I had this most amazing experience. In fact, I even wrote a song about it. And this is a song that was played last year on the Californian coast on over 300 radio stations. There'll be small stations, but the song was called Travelers, and it was about this experience, as a lot of my songs are about my experiences. And what I will do is, just so I get it right, I'll just read this A4 page. Is that okay with you? Now, this is what happened. I was standing at Star Hill, looking out over Scratchbury Hill, when this light appeared. When I got back home after this experience, well, before I went, I said to Tellos, look, I need to write all this down. Will I remember it? And he said, yes, go back home and you will remember it practically word for word. So I quickly wrote this down. And what I put at the time was, the bright star moved down over Scratchbury Hill, followed the contours of the summit, and came down into the field immediately in front of me. There it hovered, just a few inches above the ground, sparkling and jewel-like, enticing me to move closer and observe. I walked nearer this glittering diamond from the sky and waited. I felt the blood pulsing through my veins. Both my heart and mind were eager in anticipation of what would happen next. Then a section of this glowing sphere grew more radiant, and from this radiance stepped two men, two beautiful looking men with shoulder length silver hair and dressed in shiny silver clothing. The taller man held up his hand, palm open, with fingers pointing towards the sky. And in my mind, I heard the word welcome. I automatically held my hand in the same way. And he said to me, you must open your mind, I was told, before it is too late, meaning humanity. How do you think you will react when faced with the knowing that you have trapped yourselves? It did not have to be this way. You are fast heading towards the final stages of your transition. Energies are approaching from somewhere near the center of your galaxy that will give you the opportunity for change, the opportunity to shift your awareness and your eternal self into a higher dimension, a higher frequency, where you will find new horizons and become part of a much larger family and play a much more responsible role in the unfolding of this universe. You are, all of you, independent sparks of consciousness from the prime creator, the source of all that is. We are also aware of the universal law of free will, and we will not impose ourselves upon those who do not seek for enlightenment. We are here this evening in answer to your calling, and we warn you now of the dangers your planet faces in the upcoming years. She will need your help to bring her through into the new reality, the transition into a higher frequency dimension. Too many people are still asleep, Numbed into submission, they stare into their TV screens and read the headlines of their newspapers and accept their lot. He then smiled, and I noticed, as he looked down, a mischievous glint in his eye as he continued. And they think you are weird, the strange boy who chases lights in the sky whilst talking of life on other planets. In the next few years, we will show ourselves more in the skies in the hope of waking up some of these lost souls, and you must play your part in the telling of this cosmic tale. Stay focused and true to yourself. Take time to meditate and concentrate your mind on your inner divine being. This will be your unfailing guide as we enter the troubled times of not only Gaia's transition, but also the up-tempo beat of control in your society. Whatever is thrown at you now, do please believe us when we tell you that they are frightened men. They need to keep the frequency down in order for their own survival. Otherwise, they will find their lives changed forever. And whether they accept their karmic debt or not, the balance sheets will need to be balanced. Yes, the ride ahead may be difficult, and that is entirely up to you and what you intend to do about the events being set into place. But the final transition will be glorious to behold. The two men looked down and smiled, their bodies glowing silver in the dark night. The craft, which seemed sentient itself, watched and waited for the command to allow them to re-enter. They once again held their hands palm forward with fingers pointing to the sky, and as they stepped backwards, the craft increased its brilliance, and I knew this magical moment was about to end. They turned and walked through the radiant diamond as if blending into the essence of light. They returned from whence they had come, and the craft retreated to the starry heavens. I stood for ages, I'm not sure how long, and wondered how many of those countless suns shining in the firmament also supported life. Eventually, I made my way back home, driving the car along the dark track and back to the main road, all the time scanning the sky for any sort of movement, in the vain hope of a sudden return of the radiant sphere of light. I'd met these men before, and I was quite sure we would meet again in the not too distant future. When? I was never sure. Now that was back in 1970, and it really fits in with what's going on today.
It really also fits in perfectly with the Sirian Revelations teachings.
Yes.
Perfectly. No wonder
Yeah.
you were attracted to that, to my books.
Yes. No, I think we are living in the times of revelations, definitely.
Yeah, but I mean, the message that came through them was just exactly what the council have been saying. Wonderful. Yeah. So maybe we are both connected through the Sirian vibration.
Well, yes. I used to tell my mother I was from the Sirian system, and she didn't quite know what to make of it.
You did?
But she would say, but remember, I'm the seventh child of a seventh child, which is what she always
said. You did identify your experience as being Sirian?
Did I what? Sorry. Yeah. Well, no. I knew when I was a child that I'd come from the Sirian system, but it's something I've never spoken about.
No, in fact, you never said that before. That's quite exciting for me.
Yes. I feel, I try and come across as being which I am, an ordinary man with some extraordinary experiences. But I'm aware of not going over the top, which might be normal to me, but for people to think, oh God, now his sound has come from somewhere in space.
Right, but
So,
you did announce that when you were 4 years old.
well,
To
I
your,
did. Yeah, but that was
and
to
now
my
you're
mother.
letting us know that you identified that as serious, which is probably why you and I are having such a great time together here.
Absolutely. Similar energy. Yes.
And a
Yes.
lot of people who are listening are also obviously attuned to me on that level too. A lot of Syrians um, are attracted to my work, obviously. So it's kind of a beautiful dynamic. I'm really enjoying it, knowing that having you announce that here is quite extraordinary, isn't it?
Yes, I don't talk about it. I didn't talk about my hybrid children for years, and I didn't talk about the implants until very recently.
You still have them.
I don't know. I'm not taken like I used to be anymore.
Did you have
No, I don't.
a moment where you had these implants examined and trying
No,
to?
because the one that happened when I was a child, when I was 7, when my doctor came every morning and injected me, and there was sometimes these two men, and my mother said they were wanting what was going to come out of your body.
Don't
But they,
like that at all.
no, they took it away, and the one that was came out of my back, I was about to put it in a jar, if you remember, a clean jar, and I suddenly turned. I couldn't stop myself and flushed it down the toilet. And I was about to drop it into this clean jar to keep
Well,
it.
it wasn't time for it to come out, was it?
I went. Well, I'm just going aside from that. Um, I have a I have a back injury which happened when I was 17 years old, and I was in my first job. I was a trainee tea taster and buyer, and I absolutely loved that job. In London, I worked for a tea company called Lipton's. Now, one day, I had two trains and a bus to get home. So everybody just rushed out the building at 5 o'clock because of the transport issues. This evening, I suddenly had this strong impression just wait behind, and I didn't know why. I was standing there, everyone had gone, and I suddenly said to myself, well, why am I standing here? I need to get home. So I started to leave the tea tasting room, and in a little office was a friend of mine who used to do the typing, and he was standing looking out of an open window. Now we were 8 floors up, and I said to him, "I'm off now, George. Don't make sure you leave soon." And he suddenly got up onto the window ledge, and he had an hand each side of the window ledge, and he was just about to lever himself off out the window where he would have fallen 8 floors. I rushed over there. Now, in those days, it was just what they call linoleum on the floor, not carpet, and it was slippery. And I had my hands up around his waist because the window was up quite high, and I was trying to get him back in. And all I could think is, if I fail to do this, I'm going to look out the window and see him flattened on the pavement below. So I knew I had to get the strength from somewhere, but I was at a disadvantage from where I was standing and holding him. But I did manage to get him back in. He threw a chair at me. He wasn't too happy. I locked the window and I ran through to see if my boss was still in his office, which he was. And I told him what had happened. And I said, "You'd better go and see him." Well, I started to get a bad backache. And eventually, years later, I went to Adam Brooks in Cambridge, and they discovered I had 3 ruptured discs at the base of the spine. Now, that caused me havoc throughout my life because I used to constantly slip a disc, and it damaged the nerves in my spine. They couldn't see the bottom of the nerves at the bottom of the spine. They said they must just disappear. They're all squashed over to one side. But the point I'm saying is that many, many years later, perhaps about 8 years ago now, I inquired at the doctors again, and they sent me to see a consultant. And he said, well, what we want to do, he said, we want to do an MRI scan of the back of your spine. And after that, we want to do an MRI scan of your brain. And he said to me, have you got any metal in your head? And I said, I've got some alien implants. And I mean, I sort of said it tongue in cheek, but I thought, well, there might be, there might be. I didn't want them dislodged by the MRI scanner. So he was writing, and he just lifted up his eyes, looked at me, didn't say anything, and wrote something down. And I then got a letter from the hospital saying the consultant has decided not to scan your brain.
Wow. I'm surprised the letter didn't say, we want to see you in the psych ward.
Yes. Now, one of the next most important things.
Wait, no, hold on. What was the significance of this story? Did you think you had an alien implant in the back of your spine?
You mentioned about the implants.
Okay, so when they were talking about MRI,
and that's why I was with the consultant, and I told him about the implants in my brain.
Okay,
yes,
got it.
But the thing is, I think he understood it. I think he knew about it. Not me, but he might have come across it before. Now, in 1977, there was a very famous thing. Well, it became famous that happened. Do you know anything about the message, the space message that came over the TV?
Yes.
Yes. Well, we were, funny enough, in this book, which is quite scarce, by Stuart Holroyd, Prelude to the Landing on Planet Earth, and that was published in 1977, and the paperback had a different title. In 1979, Briefing to the Landing of Planet Earth. Now, there were several people involved in that. Sir John Whitmore, who lived in his huge country estate about 8 miles from where I lived. Uri Geller was involved. Lyle Watson was involved at the time. Yeah, and what's the lady's name? Schlemmer. She was involved.
Phyllis Schlemmer.
Yes, she was involved in it, and there was a couple other people, but Lyle Watson eventually pulled out, and so did Uri Geller for other engagements. But they were in contact. This is back in the 70s, probably started in the early 70s. They, Andrija Baharic, I think I mentioned him, they were in contact with the Nine. And whether that's the same Nine that is mentioned today, I don't know. But they were in contact with the Nine.
Was channeling the Nine. Phyllis Schlemmer was channeling the Nine.
Yes, yes. And she was like the medium in the group. And they used to be told to go somewhere to war-torn countries, etc. And they had to meditate and put energy into these places with the off-worlders' help to try and change the history of what was happening with the elites that control their war machines. But what was mentioned in that book around about 1975 was that the Nine told them that they were going to come through on TV because it was a good way to reach the masses and to try and make them realize that they're here. And they said it would happen between something like between the 8th and the 22nd of November. Now, I think this might have been 75 or 76, but this message came through in 1977, and it was in November. It was the 26th of November, and it broke in on the TV on Southern ITV at 5:12 p.m. The newsreader Ivan Mills was reading the news. Now, what happened that weekend? We had decided late on the Friday night to go and see our friends in Hampshire, not far from a transmitter called at a place called Hannington in Hampshire. The only person we told was the other member of our group who didn't come with us. And we told him that night on the telephone, so that if anybody wanted to inquire at our report centre, we were away for the weekend. So we drove there, and in the evening, my friends were out in the conservatory, and they had their guitars and they were singing and joking. I was watching the news at that time on that station. Just about 3 or 4 minutes before that message broke in, there was so much laughter coming from the conservatory. I thought, I don't need to watch the news. I'll go and join my friends in the conservatory. So I turned the television off. It wasn't till later that a friend rang and told us what had happened. Wow. Now, what had happened is that they broke into the transmitters at Hannington, which was near where we were at our friend's house, and another transmitter on the Isle of Wight at Rowridge. Now, after this book was published, I became friends through my book being published of this man that lived on the Isle of Wight. And he told me that on that day, he could see Rowridge transmitter from his living room. Unfortunately, it was after my book was published. And he said on that day, around that time, 3 flying saucer discs were circling the transmitter at Rowridge on the Isle of Wight. Now, it gets more sinister, really. The message is amazing in itself, and it really is, in a way, it's similar to my message from 1970. I could read it to you if we had time. But what happened was that, let me just get this book, because there's some interesting points in this. What happened is they broke in at Hannington and Rowridge. They think the main one was at Hannington. Now, in this book, my book, I've got here the space message, because this is interesting. You know how they cover things up. Now, we knew a man who was an engineer at the BBC, and he said that it cannot be done. It is so sophisticated. They have systems set into place, so it cannot be broken into. But they mentioned this in briefing, prelude to the landing on planet Earth, that they were going to do this, and it did happen soon after. But after it had happened, that was on the Saturday. On the Sunday, all the newspapers covered it, but they only had small amounts of information. Now, it covered the whole of the south of England and just south of the outskirts of London. And people, thousands of people, blocked the switchboards wanting to know what had happened, because Ivan Mills was reading the news and it suddenly starts to go blurry and crackly, and he like fades away and this message comes over, and the message lasts about 5.5 minutes, and it obviously could not be turned off until they had finished, and then it came back on. Now, my friend from the BBC, he actually had a recording of it. I mean, there are recordings out there now on cassette, and he brought it over and played it to us. Now, the newspapers the next day the News of the World, this is the 27th of November, they said, now I'm reading these out because this is how difficult it would be. And then a week later, there's a final explanation, which we always expect. It happens in ufology, it has done for decades. The News of the World said, a Southern TV spokesman said later, we have been flooded with calls. Our engineers are trying to discover what happened. We are assuming it was a rather sick hoax. We cannot imagine how it was done, but it appears that someone must have managed to transmit a signal over hours. The equipment used would need to be fairly sophisticated and expensive. The Sunday Express said, a post office spokesman said either a transmitter or some kind of link into landlines was used by someone and they managed to get across to the transmitters at Row Ridge and at Hannington. The Sun said post office experts tracked down the Oaks transmission to Hannington in Hampshire, but they still do not know who was responsible or how it was done. And the Sunday Times said there exists a round-the-clock surveillance system to stop this sort of things happening, and the booster masks are equipped with safeguards such as coded messages known as insertion signals as part of this monitoring system. But 1 week later, the Sunday Times says, to put this matter to rest once and for all, the Sunday Times on the 4th of December 1977 put into print that the official answer was a student prank using just £80 worth of equipment. However, I say the article failed to say why the TV company, with all its expensive high-tech devices, which were in place at that time, failed to stop the 5.5-minute message, and why their station then decided to come back online only after the message was over. So they covered it up and they never put in the message. They put in a couple of lines of the message, which out of context did it no justice at all. And I think in the times that we're living now, as much as then, the message is incredibly important. If we get time, I could read it to you. But we then came back home on Sunday evening around midnight. We've been there the whole weekend. The man that the only person we told, the fourth man of our group, that we were going to be away at the weekend at our friends in Hampshire, he was waiting outside the house and he did not look happy. We all got out the car. Yeah, we all got out the car and he came at us and he said, "What the hell have you done?" We said, "What?" He said, "Do you know about the TV message?" I said, "Yes, we do." And he said, "Well, how did you do it?" I said, "Come on, you know, we couldn't do something like that. It's far too sophisticated." And he said, "Well," he said, "there was a knock on my door Saturday night." He said, "and I opened it and there were two men who looked a bit like MIB. And they said to him, 'We know your friends are in Hampshire near the Hannington transmitter this weekend.'" Now, the only reason they could have known that was by listening to our telephone, which we knew was tapped because of what we were involved in. And our letters were always been opened and resealed. And he said, "Yeah," he said, "but they haven't done it. They couldn't have done it." And he said, "Well," he said, "we will get your friends for this," he said, "and we will make sure they go to prison." He said, and with that, they barged past him into his own home and went up the stairs into his UFO room. Now, the only way they could have known that is that they'd been there before without his knowledge. Now, he had a young child and he had a temper as well. and he flew up after them. He was so angry because of his child, and he demanded they get out the house. And they did get out, but they said, "We will get your friends for this."
Wow.
Now, we never heard any more about it, but it was a strange thing to happen, and why it was done, I really do not know.
Let me ask you this, because we are getting close to time to close for
Oh
today.
my goodness me. I've
Um,
not gone as far as I hoped.
well, we just keep having you on until we get through your whole life. But you keep saying, I'd read it to you if we have time. And to be honest, I'd love to close the show today with you reading that whole message, because a lot of people don't know about it at all. And others
Yeah.
have only heard the abbreviated version. So
Yes,
would you like to do that for us?
yes, I will. Just bear with me. I had them all laid out here. I had them all laid out here. I can read it from the book. Now, this, I mean, the more I've read this loads of times down the years, and the more things have happened on this earth, the way things are going, it was as relevant then as what it is today.
Yes.
And it's very similar to my message in a way.
And very similar to the Sirian message too. So, these are clearly, this is the bandwidth of beings that are concerned about the future of humankind and the planet, and who are interested in helping, even though we know there are others who are not. But that's
I
why
have great
it's
faith.
so powerful that we're united here, because we're coming at it from similar points.
Yes, I totally agree. Now, at the start, it's almost like this voice. It was perhaps a technology at the time, I really don't know, but they had, or the trouble they had getting through the transmitters and the other equipment that's in place. It was almost like someone was talking through water.
Yeah,
That's how someone explained it.
it
So
sounds like that exactly.
yeah, there's been several people have said the name they think it is that they can hear. Now I heard it as something like Gramaha. Now other people had heard other names like Ashtar, and I didn't quite get Ashtar from it myself. But this is what was said. This is the voice of Gramaha, the representative of the Ashtar Galactic Command, who I'm connected to, but that's not boasting. Thousands of us are. Speaking to you. For many years now, you have seen us as lights in the skies. We speak to you now in peace and wisdom, as we have done to your brothers and sisters all over this, your planet Earth. We come to warn you of the destiny of your race and your worlds, so that you may communicate to your fellow beings the course you must take to avoid the disasters which threaten your worlds and the beings of our worlds around you. This is in order that you may share in the great awakening as the planet passes into the new age of Aquarius. The new age can be a time of great peace and evolution for your race, but only if your rulers are made aware of the evil forces that can overshadow their judgments. Be still now and listen, for your chance may not come again. For many years, your scientists, governments, and generals have not heeded our warnings. They have continued to experiment with the evil forces of what you call nuclear energy. Atomic bombs can destroy the Earth and the beings of your sister worlds in a moment. The wastes from atomic power stations will poison your planet for many thousands of your years to come. We, who have followed the path of evolution for far longer than you, have long since realized this, that atomic energy is always directed against life. It has no peaceful application. Its use and research into its use must be ceased at once, or you all risk destruction. All weapons of evil must be removed. The time of conflict is now past, and the race of which you are a part may proceed to the highest planes of evolution if you show yourselves worthy to do this. You have but a short time to learn to live together in peace and goodwill. Small groups all over the planet are learning this and exist to pass on the light of the dawning new age to you all. You are free to accept or reject their teachings, but only those who learn to live in peace will pass to the higher realms of spiritual evolution. Hear now the voice of Gramaha, the representative of the Ashtar Galactic Command, speaking to you. Be aware also that there are many false prophets and guides operating on your world. They will suck your energy from you, the energy you call money, and will put it to evil ends, giving you worthless dross in return. Your inner divine self will protect you from this. You must learn to be sensitive to the voice within that can tell you what is truth and what is confusion, chaos, and untruth. Learn to listen to the voice of truth which is within you, and you will lead yourselves on to the path of evolution. This is our message to you, our dear friends. We have watched you growing for many years, as you, too, have watched our lights in your skies. You know now that we are here, and that there are more beings on and around your earth than your scientists admit. We are deeply concerned about you and your path towards the light, and we will do all we can to help you. Have no fears. Seek only to know yourselves and live in harmony with the ways of your planet, Earth. We of the Ashtar Galactic Command thank you for your attention. We are now leaving the planes of your existence. May you be blessed by the supreme love and truth of the cosmos. It's quite a powerful message. Again, back in the 70s, long while ago.
It's an extraordinary message, and it is absolutely now that we need to be hearing it. And hopefully, the truth is, I've got goosebumps. So many people are losing hope here and just feeling this claw of darkness overtake the planet. So many truthers are talking about how alien dark reptilians are in control of the planet. And, and I'm sure you believe that we also have I agree that there are dark ET forces at work, but that the galactic brother sisterhood is also observing planet Earth and caring enough to show us the way is unquestionable to me.
I totally agree with everything you said. And
And
I've
so,
always said to people that there is dark energy, but do not dwell on it.
right. Don't
Stay
resonate with it,
in the
because
light.
you
Yes.
feed it, as long as you, and some of the times when I hear some of the stuff out there, I'm like, please, the hopelessness that it's all reptilian ETs are going to just eat you and take you away. It's like, God, God, guys.
I know. I mean, even the good or the open minds, even some of them are now starting to lose faith.
Yep, they are. And that, always remembering that even, and also in the Sirian information, we were told, when you you are now dangerous to the worlds beyond you. Since the nuclear bomb, you became extremely visible, and a lot of beings and civilizations perceive you as a warring, dangerous civilization to be dealt with. And so, there's a lot of information out here in the galaxy and beyond about who and what is planet Earth. From the moment you set off those nukes, more and more beings are paying attention. And then there's also the question of the sun and ascension and the planetary ascension and whatever. But there is a great galactic fraternity, sorority of beings who are coming from love. And I just think that what a way to end this session together. Always remind people that no matter how much you get hooked on all of the, let's face it, some of the information is very addictive. And it's easier. But an actor friend of mine once said, Patricia, it's a lot easier to make people cry than it is to make them laugh.
Yes.
And it's so much easier to terrify people than to make them feel secure and strong and know that light is. And so thank you for doing that work and for being that beacon that you are and for finding me, because you're not going to get rid of me ever again. So
thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, it's wonderful. Well, you found me and I'm so glad. And we'll just keep talking until we get you up to 2021 or beyond. Okay, so you guys, thank you all for tuning in to the wonderful Mike Oram and this extraordinary story. My heart is just so full. It's wonderful. And know that, of course, he'll be back because we have, seriously, part 3 will be next. And we'll just keep going until we kind of reach a point where we're current. But in the meantime, it's timeless information anyway, isn't it? So thank you, Mike. I love you. I'm glad you're on this planet. And I'm sure everybody that's listening feels the same way. And we'll see you again soon, right?
Absolutely. Yes. Look after yourself.
We'll just document your whole life on Beyond the Matrix. All right, everybody. You've been listening to Beyond the Matrix. This is Patricia Cori with my dear brother. I mean, I'm sure you can feel it. The love I feel for this man and all the beings. They're like, oh, great. They found each other. I'll see you soon. Thanks again, Mike. And I'll see you soon on Beyond the Matrix. This is Patricia Cori signing out. Thanks, guys. Oh, and don't forget to push the whole wrap. Don't forget to subscribe because YouTube keeps taking my subscribers off 50 at a time. So resubscribe, subscribe, push the like button, send messages. I read them all. And I'm sure I'm going to invite Mike to read them too. Your comments always get an answer from me, which is kind of unique on a YouTube channel. So give us your feedback, and I'll see you soon for part 3 with Mike Oram, my galactic Sirian brother. Take care.